download the session at a later date. Thank you very much, Christina. Right, so here we go. Today we are going to talk first very briefly about the research methodology. We then go into the key figures, business travel in numbers for the trips, and then also we're looking at the costs of business travel, and we're going to share with you a future outlook and the hot topics. Before I start, I should introduce you. I don't think he needs introduction, but I should introduce you to Christoph Carnier, the president of the VDR, the German Business Travel Association. Christoph, it's lovely to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure, and looking forward for the final results.
Brilliant, yes. And Christoph is joining here particularly with his insight as travel manager, and he is going to relate the numbers that we are going to share with you back to the day-to-day business of travel management. The research methodology, as you might know, we have changed our partner. We are now working with Statista Plus, who are a German market research outfit. We are in the 23rd edition, and to do the report, we use a random sampling across the German market. We survey on phone and through an online-based survey companies of various sizes so that we can actually represent the market as a whole. And we, in this instance, questioned 803 travel managers and those responsible for business travel. We did also a corporate design refresh. Some of you might have noticed that. I don't know how familiar you are with the brand of the VDR, but it's all a little bit more fresh, a little bit more different blue, and also much more dynamic. And I think that is really showing the figures in a much better way and a much easier to read way. As I'm saying that, you will also find a link at the end, and you might have found the link already. The business report as the PDF is also available for download, as is going to be this presentation. So if you wanted any of the graphics for publication, then you can have those as well. Now let's go into the key figures. What we see is 107.1 million trips, 47.2 billion euro, and 439 euro average per trip spend. Now, Christoph, these numbers look big to me, but how do they look to you? You're in the business. What do you make of these numbers?
Well, on one hand, not really surprising. Instead of the cost per trip, this is one thing. Also the numbers, but not on the spend at all. We are coming a little bit back from spend perspective from a pre-pandemic situation, but I think it would make more sense to put it in a little bit of context about the previous years. Then you see a total different. You will see clear effects.
Well, then let me oblige you this once. Here we go with the numbers and figures in comparison. And what we've done here is we've looked at the most recent numbers, of course. We compared them to the last year, and then we also compared them to pre-pandemic levels. Now, Christoph, I'll just hand straight back to you.
Yeah, I think this comparison to the previous year would, in brackets, just show that we have a 2% higher spend than the previous year. But what is interesting is we have still less numbers of trips, which is also in combination. You see that the trips cost per trips have increased. Let's say in a range what we have seen in the past, maybe. But if you compare this to the pre-pandemic situation, and also why I also mentioned when we had the first results that it would make sense to present this maybe one last time before in the future we skip this pre-pandemic situation a little bit. But I think still the companies have still in mind that they spend a lot of money for business trips, and coming a little bit from this pre-pandemic situation. But finally, what was happening during the pandemic situation, nobody was really traveling. Yeah, so the comparison to the previous period is totally disappeared. What an effect is that the costs have increased significantly for a business trip. And we just want to bring this in the right view because on one hand, of course, all suppliers in this whole mobility market had significant loss during the pandemic situation. So this is one reason maybe also for the cost increase because they need to recover from this, partly still need to recover from this. But also the costs have increased significantly. Labor costs, energy, everybody knows this has increased significantly. And this is also one part what you see here. So, and the question is if you want to come back now in number of trips to a pre-pandemic situation, you have two options. You have to significantly adjust your budgets, which most likely is not going to happen, or you need to think about a little bit on your overall travel program, how you are conducting travel in the future. Whatever you see, and this is various reasons why also the costs per trip have jumped from 238 to 439. But we will see this later on.
Yes, indeed we shall. And I would like to bring in one other reason as well into this, which we're going to see here. The length of business trips has, well, it's gotten longer, let's say. The day trips have disappeared. And we can see this on this slide. We brought the comparison to the previous years in again. We can see that trend line, but still in the last year when we did the survey, we still had 40% saying they were doing day trips, and this has gone down to 1%, which is rather significant. Can you speak to that trend a little bit, Christoph?
On one hand, I was a little bit surprised that this drops so drastic, and trying to put this into let's say a content or find a coherent answer to this. At least in Germany, what we saw in 2024 is that economy was still not doing so well. This means you even have to take more um, consideration when going on a business trip. Yeah, and this is why people tend to combine the business trips and not only going for one meeting, combining more meetings in one trip. And also on top of this, what we see in the meantime, and this, by the way, was maybe, and therefore the pandemic situation was an accelerator. You can work from everywhere. If you are not in a production business, um, you can really do your job from everywhere. You can do it on the train. You can do it in the hotel. So this also helps to extend the trips a little bit because there is no need to come back and do it at a later point in time. So you can do other things while you are at your final destination and do your meetings the next time or the next day or two. So there was no need to have multiple trips.
Right. Okay, thank you very much for that. And let's look a little bit more at the number of business trips. So we see here a comparison between small and large corporations. Small corporations are those with 500 employees or less, and large those with 500 and above. And we see here that there is a decline for the small companies, for the SMEs. Yet the big ones, they have kind of held their level. Is that something that you see in the marketplace?
Yes, definitely. And and also when you look into the economic situation, the SME corporations, which are the backbones of our whole economy, they were really affected hard in 2024. Just take one example, automotive industry, really heavily affected. And of course, whatever comes on top in terms of costs, where you can immediately create a reduction, and travel most likely is one of the areas where you immediately can reduce your costs. And this is exactly what you currently see here. So the big companies remain a little bit stable, but the smaller ones are really a little bit more cost cautious in terms of trips.
Right, thank you. So let's move along towards trip purpose, which I know is also always an interesting finding. Why do people travel? And what surprised me a little bit was that still almost a quarter of travel is internal meetings. I assumed that we would see a further reduction in that field. Naturally, I guess almost a third is business development and sales, and then client projects, which includes maintenance travel. And that is only about 1 in 5. What is your, can you mirror that with the business that you run?
Um, Definitely, and also I have to say I'm a little bit, well, not really happy that these internal meetings always have such a negative flavor. Yeah. Um, Obviously, people have an understanding that we just go there, meet somewhere, and have some fun. Yeah. Maybe in best case, this is also going to happen, because work should make fun, by the way. But I think it's and also especially what was happening in the past years. You see very often that people have joined a company, and they have not met in person. Yeah. And there are tons of other good reasons why people should meet in person, yeah, to discuss projects, to create ideas, to uh, create or work on projects, and having a little bit or a better design or be more creative. This is one thing. And also all companies, they do have a philosophy, how they want to run their business, and also how to treat each other. And this is something which you only can do when you conduct internal meetings. So I would not see this in a negative context. I would be more in favor if this could seen from a different angle, that this is some people say it's an ordinary course of business, but I think it's an essential um, part to be successful. Yeah, because you can maintain what you know already. Yes, you can do this online, but from time to time you need to meet in person. And the other things, I would say this is a regular or normal development of the business trip activities.
I really like that, and thank you for catching me out on the internal meetings. Um, Maybe we need to, or I need to reframe that in my mind, definitely, because as you say, there is a lot of development, a lot of innovation that happens internally in companies as well, and that needs to happen, and that can be fostered in a much better way when you come together as a team in person, of course.
And
So.
especially when the business is under pressure. Yeah. I mean, you can say, hey, everybody, go back to your home office and think about what can we do better. But maybe it's more efficient to bring people together and then ask the question, what can we do as a team to become better?
Right. Right. No, that's brilliant, and I really thank you for it. Would you, though, would you encourage this area to grow, or are you happy to have it as a sort of steady 25%?
And one fourth of the activity seems for me to be fine. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, of course, I mean, there are good reasons for other stuff. I mean, client facing, yeah, is definitely something which is really important. What I'm also missing a little bit here is supplier facing. Yeah. Or maybe the question is, where does supplier facing fall under? Because um, working together with suppliers, developing your products, your programs, is also something which is crucial. Yeah. Maybe we can think about it for the next one.
It's a great idea. Yes, I like it. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Right now, We talk about a lot, of course, ours are German numbers. However, we don't always stay in Germany when we travel. And we are actually finding that there is a trend that we are traveling more and more abroad. So in comparison to last year, 35% of all trips have been taken outside of Germany. That's a combination you see here. Again, the split between the SMEs and the large corporations. And of course, as I would have expected, the large corporations have much more business outside of Germany. But I think it's encouraging that over a fifth of the SMEs are also traveling outside of Germany into Europe. What is your opinion on that? And how, do you think that through corporate travel we can strengthen what we're trying to do in the EU?
Um, I mean, it's not surprising. Germany is an export nation. I was a little bit surprised, by the way, that more than 500 employees, just a little bit more than half is domestic. I would have seen this difference that we have more international trips than domestic in total. But however, I mean it's not surprising. And of course, there's the smaller ones. That is not surprising. That the majority of the business trips they are doing is within the country. And I'm pretty sure we will see this later on when we look about means of travel, how this is going to evolve.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so let's look at the costs before we go to the transportation, which is coming up in this section. And I do want to quickly throw in a note of apology because I'm looking at these slides and down here, I spent a bit of time yesterday translating all these questions and information that we put in the footnotes. And apparently I have today opened the wrong deck in my excitement to share the findings with you. Now, just be assured that when we upload it, all of this will be in English. Apologies for that. So here we look at the development of trip costs in 2024 in billion of euros in comparison to 2023. Christoph, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I think this here we don't have so much to add. You see that all of the companies, regardless of the size, had invest more while also accepting getting less number of trips or doing the trips maybe a little bit different. But I would consider it is a similar size what the increase is displayed here.
Okay. Right, let's go into corporate traveler booking behavior. We see, and we have seen it for years, an online trend which really does continue. Um, the one thing that stands out is obviously the rental car, and there we have 20% of bookings being made in the section other. What do you think could that refer to?
You mean the other stuff?
The other stuff on the rental car, yeah. I have an idea. I tell you my idea, and maybe you can just agree with me if you agree with me. I think it might be that people don't pre-book their rental cars and they just come to the
Just walk
airport,
in.
they go to the desk.
Yeah, especially I think this is still something which surprises me personally always. Let's say fly somewhere and then go to one of the counters and check there what's maybe if there are any leftovers, which maybe works out sometimes. Um, but if you are on a business trip, I mean, but this is a personal thing. Yeah. I I would be a little bit afraid finally to not finally get a car because of there is a fair going on or any other circumstances will have an effect. But I know also some people doing this and says, let me check out when I arrive and where I get the best price or the best car for the best price. Maybe also something like this. Maybe some people like this negotiation like negotiation on a market in Dubai, maybe something like this. This is what some people still in love with.
Right, right. Maybe it's a different type of sales training for the reps being going out and abroad. Never know. All right, so let's see. Average trip component.
But
Um,
maybe one part, if you just can go one back, because maybe this
okay,
could fall
sorry.
into a different you can have a different impression. Yeah. When we see here 75, 76% are booked via booking portals. Um, I would also add here that everything what is booked through any online booking engine usually ends up, or in a majority of the cases, also on TMC side. Yeah. What is uh, here in yellow, it's just really the pure numbers where people call the travel agency, or what is called offline. Yeah. I think this is important to understand, because otherwise some people who are not in our industry could have easily the impression that you don't need a travel agency anymore. Yeah. And this would be a wrong interpretation of the numbers.
Thank you for calling that out, Christoph. That is a very, very important distinction to make that yes, the TMC online booking tools are in those large numbers here that are online Buchungsportale. And again, my apologies, you will have the translated version later on in the day. Right, second try, the average trip by component spend. Transportation spend is mainly driven by air, but rail is really catching up, as we can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Before I open the floor to you, Christoph, I just want to point out that in this graphic, it does look that the accommodation is fairly low with 25% when we are really used to seeing accommodation to be at around a third when we look at the share. However, for the first time, we put in fleet into our question, and we think that thereby the distribution has changed to the detriment of accommodation. So we are going to sharpen our pencils and make that question a little bit more, a little better for the next time round, so that we still get the spend for fleet, but don't mingle it all up together. I think that will be a very important learning. Christoph, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, in general, a little bit surprising. I think I don't need to further comment, because absolutely right what you just have mentioned. But of course, on one hand, makes totally sense. A lot of people using their company car, even if it is a let's say a functional car, because they are technicians, which is also a business trip, um, or if it is their benefit car and they use it for a business trip. Um, and also, if you put this in correlation with that, I think we haven't not seen the one of the how long the duration. I think we're coming there.
We're coming
Um,
there.
so therefore, it is a little bit surprising. But on the other hand, we also see a huge increase in the costs. And what is very, especially on the airfare side, maybe some people think, well, the prices within Europe, for example, haven't changed so much. But the question is how you look at it, because if you say, hey, last year I paid 280, this year 380, well, it's just 100 euro, but we are talking about a 30% increase. Yeah, something like this, which is not sometimes really visible because they see the total spend. While on the other hand, if you use a long distance flight in business class, for example, where you have paid last year 2,500 and now you pay 3,800, from the percentage, maybe it's a little bit the same, but of course the total spend is is different, and then you see a high increase. And
Mm.
that we use quite a lot of train is also not surprising, because the majority of the trips are still domestic. This is one thing. Second, all the companies have really to perform some activities in regard to be more sustainable. And this is also one of the reasons where you see a clear shift towards trains. So also the usage, for example, in our company, flying domestic is extremely low. Yeah.
That's great. While you were talking, I thought I'll bring in the next slide because you were really already talking about these points of the average usage of main transports. And what you just said is really mirrored here, right? We have 44% using the rail on for domestic trips. And then air, of course, as it maybe should be, is more important still for European trips. And so I think that is really what we were also just saying.
But also, I mean, you see here rail, 31% usage for European trips. Um, Imagine 10, 15 years ago, people would be shocked using the train for an international trip, even if it is within Europe. But also here, the network has really expanded a lot. Not only mentioning, for example, the Eurostar going to London. This is just one thing. But for example, I mean, if I would have to go to Brussels or Amsterdam, I rarely use the flight. Yeah, I take the train. I can work almost the whole time on the train. Um, and from the timing perspective, I don't lose anything. Yeah. Of course, it always depends where you finally are located. If you have a good network, I'm based in the center of Germany. This is, or at least, even if it's not really the center, but we have really a good infrastructure here, and I usually can get everywhere within 2, 3 hours.
Yeah, which is a huge advantage, of course. And speaking of rail in that way, across the borders, I think we are seeing more and more initiatives to make that rail network even better and more customer friendly, both in terms of train times, punctuality, but also in terms of ticketing and how we purchase travel. I think there are a couple of initiatives going on in Brussels. Right. We also looked at the average usage of last mile transport options. We put this in slightly very bright colors just to differentiate that we have really jumped the topic here and are not talking about main transport options anymore. So we see taxi is still up there. Nearly 60% of the large corporation use the taxi for that last mile of the trip or the last connecting factor. But ride sharing is a constant 23%. Public transport, I don't know, is that catching up, Christoph? Would you say that is becoming more of an option, or does it also depend on where you go?
It definitely depends on where you go. I remember we just had a discussion about this towards politicians, by the way, or authorities. I'm, for example, a super fan of the whole system in London, for example, or Stockholm, where you just hold on your credit card or your smartphone and you're in. And then you leave again while showing your payment method. Yeah. So that's it. It's super easy. You don't have to study the machines. And I think this is something where Germany is a little bit lacking of it. And this is, again, we are talking about German figures. Um, Therefore, it's for me, it's a little bit a convenient factor why people using so much taxi. Yeah, I have learned in the meantime that public transport is really easy to use, good to use, especially abroad. Um, for Germany, by the way, I have the Deutschland ticket, the very famous one. Yeah, um, and of course, because I have this ticket, I try to use it whenever possible. And also, the apps are getting better and better. That you get all your whole connectivity in a way better way than it was a couple of years ago, and this will become more easier also in the future.
Right. It would get my vote. Coming back from London was a little bit of an eye-opener for me as I came back to Germany. But I have to say, in the 2 years that I have been back, it seems that more and more businesses, and also, of course, in the travel sector, are approaching the non-cash payment options and really driving that digitization forward. which is lovely.
And again, also this whole AI stuff with all the apps you have. It is simply getting easier. What you just mentioned, non-cash options. When you use the app, you have everything online. You receive the receipt, uh, the payment. You don't have to wait in the car. You just pay and you leave. Yeah. So it is at the end of the day, it's about convenience. Yeah. Or process efficiency. I think this is also something where we will have a look later on.
Yes, yeah, very true. That is coming up. But for now, let's look at why people would still take a flight. Saving time is the main reason. So if people are really pushed for time for meetings, then flight is still the go-to transport method. But lower costs could also play a role. And of course, better connections and higher frequency of domestic flights. Now, we've seen, of course, in the last few months and maybe years, there is steady decline on domestic flight options. How do you feel when you look at these numbers, Christoph?
One thing what is missing is also, by the way, why choosing the other way around? Why choosing a train, for example? Because when we talk about productivity, I can work way better on the train instead
Mhm.
of a flight because you have also too much steps in between. But I understand the whole concept and also maybe a little bit the fears behind because if you are in an area where you have to connect permanently, then there is a certain risk you lose your connection, and then it could end up in a painful day maybe. Yeah, though in general, but I fully in line with that the travel time overall plays for sure the most important role because sometimes it simply doesn't make sense. Um, and costs is always a topic also, because sometimes they say, hey, I can save here 100 euros because or 150 because the flight is simply cheaper than the train. Yeah. But again, I mean, maybe you should also compare this productivity factor with the cost saving. But this is a personal thing, maybe a little bit, but I think can be more guided. But convenience, time, this is driving it.
Right. And I think what you're saying is what we are seeing here when we're looking at how much extra hours are you accepting rail trips to last longer than air. And we see that 82% would stay or would consider a door-to-door extra 3 hours okay and acceptable. And I think that speaks to your point that it is just being able to work on the train much easier, much better um, than on a flight.
Absolutely. I mean, we are talking about extra, yeah, because otherwise, not total trip time, but 1 hour is almost nothing, um, because if you use air, car, uh, everything what is within 1 hour plus minus is for me almost on time. And then uh, on on top, hours spent in total 3 hours. 82% is still a good number. And I fully agree. If it is more than 4 hours, this could lead to the fact that your whole day is done. Yeah, and you leave early and uh, come back late, which I fully got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. So let's look a little bit at accommodation preferences here. We see that German travelers prefer staying in hotels, and we see in the SME sector a little bit more variance, if you will, and they might go more easily to an Airbnb or a serviced apartment. Does this surprise you, or is that something you would wholeheartedly sign?
Oh, in general, this is something each company needs to define for yourself what you can use and what not.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a little bit reluctant personally when we're talking about a business trip for using sharing economy. Yeah, because when you take the duty of care obligation into consideration, and this is why uh, I mean in general that you have a high amount of still hotels, because the hotels they have some obligations to fulfill in terms of safety and security measures. So you need to understand where are emergency exits and all these things. They have the regular checks, and of course, it's not for free. If you're using sharing economy, you end up in a private spot, which should be super cool, super fancy, no doubt about this. Yeah, and everybody loves the experience and it's exciting and increases traveler satisfaction until it comes to the point when something really serious is happening in those things. Yeah, somebody has an accident, um, without making it too too worse or too complicated. As a company, we have this duty of care obligations, and therefore, this is my personal view on this, I would be extremely careful when using sharing economy. This is one thing.
Mhm.
Um, What is also increasing, by the way, is this number of serviced apartments. Even if the share is comparable low, but you see up to 500 employees, we are already at 10%. More than 500 employees, we are already at 5%. This has become really an interesting option because also of the different working models, yeah, we see. Because very often people stay longer, and you don't have every night, and this is a good thing, by the way, you don't have every night a dinner. Um, Otherwise, everyone would look like Luciano Pavarotti or like brothers and sisters from him. Um, I don't know, by the way, his brothers and sisters. Um, but um, this has really what the service apartment has really become a stable factor with an increasing potential, because also you see more and more coming. You have a little bit of a more private spot when your workday has ended. Well, it's the official workday, because very often people like to move around like at home or in their own condo. They have a kitchen, or at least some place where they can prepare their food on their own. They can have usually supermarkets are not too far away. And also here there are some really cool concepts in the service apartment area.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And so we both see this trend rising in importance potentially over the next few years. Is that right?
Absolutely. But also sharing economy. This is something you will not um, you will not stop. And by the way, if you would just look on the pricing perspective, I got it. I mean, you don't need to convince me. But also here is something with the whole obligations we have as a company. We really need to be careful how to use this. Part of the sharing economy are also, of course, professional managed um, hotels or maybe also serviced apartments, which are professional managed and also fulfill all those obligations. But the majority is still privately owned. Yeah.
Yes, you are right, though I do believe that Airbnb in particular, and I don't know it of any of the others, but they do have a business product where the owners of the flat, first of all, it can only be rented to you privately. There can't be any other people in the same place at the same
Mhm.
time. And then there are some safeguards around fire safety and all the rest of it. So
Right.
Airbnb really has gone in and done their homework to be able to cater to the corporate travelers. However, of course, there is a grey area as well. So when you open the door, how far can you open? How far can you control that the employees are booking what they're supposed to be booking, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but we'll watch the space. And let's now go into the average rate structure for hotel bookings. So bar rates are fairly common, 40% use bar. Then we have negotiated or fixed corporate rates and combination of the two of them, and only 3% on the dynamic rate. Um, I am a little bit conscious of the time. Do you have anything to add here, or do you want me to race on?
Uh, Well, I mean, this is just a matter of how you set your business and also how much room nights you produce at the end of the day, because not for every destination it makes sense to negotiate a fixed corporate rate because you simply do not have the volume behind.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, just leave
Okay.
as is.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we are going to jump into the future outlook and the hot topics. So here we asked the travel managers what topics they were working with, had been working with in the past. So in 2024, we're going to focus on in 2025 and move into in 2026. So we also wanted to be able to compare, are there any topics dropping off the agenda? Are there topics rising in importance? And all that good stuff. And of course, we are going to start with the topic of sustainability, which is being driven quite substantially in Germany. And we see here that we're looking at it from two sides: the holistic consideration of business trips in terms of environmental sustainability, and then also on-trip working conditions, so workation, blended travel, and that more social aspect of sustainability. Um, Christoph, do you have anything to add there?
Um, no, but just I try to make it short. Sustainability was really on top for the last 2 years. Last year, it seems a little bit disappearing because other things come in, and also that the CSR requirements didn't need to full execute it in 2025, but it's just postponed. It's not eliminated. Therefore, I think this will come again. And by the way, it's also good that we look on sustainability. And the other stuff, what you here mentioned, is this on-trip working conditions, blended travel or pleasure travel, however you call it. This is part of this new working model that you have to offer things like this, or at least allow such possibilities to attract employees. My take on this.
Yes, and I believe there is quite a lot of work and quite a lot of discussions. I hear it in the corporate forums that we have in our regional conferences. I heard it in Ingolstadt last week that there are many travel managers not quite sure on how to go about this topic and where to what guidelines to put in place, how to advise their travelers. And the session around that, we had a law and taxes session that was also partly talking about this setup. That was really insightful because it is quite a headache if you're trying to open up workation, for example, to the whole world. And that's why you see quite a lot of restriction, especially for European country to stay within the European Union. So a lot more to come there. As a side note, as VDR, we have begun a partnership with GCB, the German Convention Bureau, and we're looking at this topic together to join forces and to provide some guidance for travelers in Germany. Right. And then we have the measures to promote environmental sustainability. And we have here the top three measures that have been in place, that are in place, and that will be in place. And what is here really, I think, most significant is the use of electric vehicles for business trips from 2026. They are already quite high. Now they're over half in 2025 are promoting the use of electric vehicles, but it's rising. How do you feel about that, Christoph?
I would say it's a a normal trend based on the sustainability goals because most companies have already decided when they want to become carbon neutral. And if you want to achieve this, of course, you need to start early. And also people have to uh, adjust to these new options. A lot of people are still afraid in using electric cars. Um, if you are not used to it, I fully understand this. Yeah, but also in the meantime, you see that the infrastructure we have has improved drastically. We are not super. Other countries can do better, but at least you get uh, everywhere you get the electricity to recharge the cars, but however, I mean, it takes some time. So give the people a little bit of time, and you will see in a couple of years it will anyhow not be a discussion anymore because people are used to it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree. And I am surprised how many, how good the infrastructure is already. My parents have just bought an electric car and they were very worried because they go all over the place in Europe. And they have found it much nicer traveling because you take a little break, you charge the car, have a little break, and then you travel again. So it makes the travel experience a little bit calmer, essentially. For some people, it works.
For some people, you are absolutely right. When you're on a business trip and have to go to your next appointment, you are not really happy with the break you have to do. You know.
Very true, but you're less happy with a traffic jam, and you might end up getting into. Right. Another question that was really important to us is a topic about safety, security, and travel risk management. And we really wanted to know, has that changed over the last 5 years in comparison with 2019? And we found that for more than, well, nearly all, it's over 90%, it is more important. And for over half, it's significantly more important. That speaks, I think, to itself.
Mhm.
What surprised me a little, Christoph, maybe you can shed some light on this, is how many travel managers have to have the topic of travel risk management under their guidance, governance, and responsibility. Does that surprise you as well?
Um, yes and no. It depends on it depends on simply the size and the structure of your company. In the best case, if you're talking about a large corporation, they usually have a dedicated department taking care since many years about this whole security topic or
Mhm.
risk management. And part of this um, is also the traveler risk. And in best case, you have established um, a really functioning and efficient collaboration. Yeah. So we do, and by the way, we are not claiming, for example, here to be the owner of this safety, security, and travel risk management. We know that we are just a part of this whole chain, and we have to deliver the data, which is fully fine. And then at a certain point in time, somebody needs to make the decisions. Yeah, of course, we collaborate and maybe we take the decision together. Um, but there is a function. Yeah, in some companies, smaller companies, maybe there is not such a dedicated uh, function, which is absolutely fine, and someone has to take it over because. And this is what we have seen in the past. I mean, starting maybe with the pandemic situation, but now we have all these geopolitical things, and this is, by the way, not new. Think about, I mean, this whole century, yeah, starts already with 9/11, for example, which was an early one. So very often the travel managers, unfortunately, but they get used to it, yeah, because something pops up. We had 9/11, we had the tsunami, or even if it is just economic crisis or maybe a volcano who decides to pollute the whole air, and people stuck. So you need to react. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with all these geopolitical tensions, frictions, it is not getting better. Yeah. And these are the challenges. And therefore, it is not surprising that this topic becomes really of more and more interest.
Yeah. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to push through. So
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, we looked at that. Of course, it's on everybody's mind. I would say travel managers expect AI to land on their desk latest in 2026. We see that there are already companies using AI. Especially those with those larger companies. Now, what I would like to say here is that what we found is most of them use support through ChatGPT or other AI implementations that are made available through the company. we have not yet found somebody within the German market of travel managers who have a full end-to-end process that works based on or is integrated with an artificial intelligence. Just for clarity here. And then we saw in 2024, we have already about a third looking into AI and travel management, and we expect an increase to 63%, so two-thirds from 2026. We also saw that at our conference last week. There is a huge interest in AI. There is a huge moment of wondering, a little bit of anxiety with a lot of question marks of travel managers thinking, am I too late? Are other people doing something? Am I missing out? So we're trying to help and give them some guidance around what they can do already with artificial intelligence. And we're very lucky to have Professor Bingemer from the Hochschule Heilbronn.
Heilbronn.
I nearly said the wrong one, but no, thank you very much, Christoph, who is helping us with that, and it's always great fun.
Yeah, and this is coming so fast. This whole AI stuff. You are absolutely right. Not yet end-to-end available, but there are already some cool features in the market, and it is definitely the right time to look into it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now here we have some more hot topics in travel management. We already talked about travel risk management, of course. Payment is still up there, but also EU and international law. And that is what we were referencing when we were talking about workation, leisure travel, and all that good stuff, because people need to understand what is legally allowed, what are the obligations, where does duty of care stop when somebody is on a business trip that then turns into a vacation, and those things. Travel managers are really starting to get to grips with all of that. And then, Christoph, earlier you already mentioned process optimization. Why don't you share some more insights on that topic, please?
Yeah, but what you don't see anymore, that there is nothing in terms of airline negotiations, which was a hot topic many years ago. You don't see it. Because there's a high visibility already on the market. People are used to it, and it's about reducing the processes. They are very often complicated, and by the way, therefore, it's not surprising that also payments, because the payment part is part of this process, and this fits pretty much into it. And also what you just mentioned with blended or pleasure travel. The laws come into social security, taxation is a big topic. And of course, commuting, by the way, is really increasing, especially in Germany. Therefore, no surprise with this Deutschland ticket, and also with this CSR reporting coming in. This is definitely something which will play a role. And by the way, these are not the topics from the last year. These are the topics, the actual ones.
That is correct. Yeah, these are the topics filtered by 2025. So the ones that we travel managers are looking at this year in particular. Thanks for pointing that out. And you just mentioned commuting. We looked at three of these topics of growing interests that really, where you can really see from 2024 to or with 2026 that are on the rise and on the ascent, if you will. And what surprised me was event management being so like a straight line shooting up. What do you make of that, Christoph?
Well, the event management is a little bit surprising that this has become now such a hot topic, let's say like this. Commuting, no surprise, because this has sometimes simply not exist, but now with this whole CSR reporting, you have to look into this. But of course, with event management, also this plays a significant role. It's a huge cost bucket, and also to have a structured approach. This makes totally sense, because this was pretty much decentralized, organized, and now companies also find out, hey, this is something we need to consolidate to have a little better grip on this.
Right. Yes. Just to also say that I have heard it from the committee the SME committee that we have in the VDR, that there are a lot of meetings that are events really, but that fall under travel, and they would like to split the two. And I'm wondering if that could also be a driver that after the pandemic, people are wanting to do more events and they now looking for guidance to be able to
Hmm.
split the payments correctly and have the right setup for it.
Yeah, but again, it's in general not a big surprise. But also I think this affects the whole community because in the larger companies, all of these things are already a little bit longer managed.
Right. We are coming to the last slide, and Christoph, I'm going to leave you to do this wrap up and finish us off, please.
Um, well, I think if you look on the whole numbers, it is on one hand, it plays a significant role, the industry. It is not only costs, it also is a large contribution to company success because without connecting people, and this is finally what we are doing as travel managers or everyone who is um, connected in this whole mobility industry, we are connecting people, and this is for the success. And also in these days, um, it should really you should have more personal interaction instead of all these digital conversations. And it plays really a strategic role. And therefore, we have here strategic business travel because everything what is happening in the outside world, all geopolitical um, tangents, natural disasters, everything what's coming in, this is something where you have to adapt your travel program to um, if finding or identifying the right suppliers, coming also to process management because process efficiency plays a big role. Everything must be quick and easy, and the easier it is, the higher is your adoption, which is also something what the companies are looking for. And then we are coming finally also to co-creating the future because when you have easy processes, easy to use, best case, all digital. Yeah, nobody wants to have manual process anymore. If you are able to create this, then you are ahead of the curve, and then you can really make a difference of your department within your company. So that's finally famous last
Well,
words.
very famous last words. They are on record. I thank everybody so much for your time. I am sorry that we played it until the top of the hour. I'm sure that many of you will have to jump ship. As I said, if there are any questions in the chat, I will look into those and I will get back to you by email. I hope you liked it. I hope you will download the report. You will find further information in the report. As I said, the presentation will be uploaded as well, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording and all the other goodies that we put together for you. If you have any other questions, I've put my email on the screen here again, and we will be in touch. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.